Hey, I did that thing again where I wrote a review a year and a half ago and then just sat on it without recording it. This time it's Ratchet & Clank 2016. I have a very special place in my heart for this series. I did fall off the Ratchet wagon around Tools of Destruction. I never played a Crack in Time or any of the tiny games like Full Frontal Assault, so classic Ratchet & Clank, specifically, this is my jam, right? Even so, I still wasn't as excited for this Ratchet as I would have been a brand new one, but I wanted to play it nonetheless since, you know, the technical showpiece of a new Ratchet on the PS4 might be more important than the story anyway, right? Unfortunately, neither end of that bargain holds up here. That's right. In a series of games that has already made significant improvements to itself over the original, the current console generation continues to disappoint with a remake that is actually worse than the original game. How? Well, I'm glad you've asked, and it's a good thing I came prepared with this script, or I wouldn't know where to start.
We need to extend the bridge. Hop on that full crank.
The easiest place to start, and the most obvious technical aspect, is the graphics. Ratchet & Clank games have always been lookers, especially when we entered last generation with Tools of Destruction. However, the very first thing I noticed when I got into playing this game was the appalling downgrade to 30 FPS. I need to really try to completely not go off about this, but it is so damn frustrating to me that for some fucking reason, it has become industry standard that console games run at 30 frames per second. There have been 5 mainline Ratchet & Clank games until now that all run at 60 FPS and have all looked fantastic doing so why make this change now? Well, I wrote this review a year and a half ago, so looking back, it's pretty obvious. It's because our current generation of consoles are significantly less powerful than we were promised, and we're falling further and further behind the PC market. That's why all AAA games were running at 30 FPS to push out something that looks comparable to PC graphics by only having to render the image half as frequently. This is also why we've seen significant downgrades in how a game looks in E3 trailers versus release, and why we already have multiple versions of all the new consoles. There is a huge problem in this workaround though. All the fancy lighting effects in the world don't make up for not having a buttery smooth image that is easy for the eyes to follow. That's why this will always look better than this. 60 FPS matters. When you're playing a video game, you're making decisions based on information being visually and auditorially transmitted to you. That's what video games are. So you want the information to be as up-to-date as possible, right? Games have always run at 60 FPS because that was the standard television refresh rate at the time that we started playing video games. Nowadays, you can find plenty of higher refresh rates, but could you honestly tell me with a straight face that you would buy a 30 FPS television? So why would you want a game that only uses 30? Here's what this all boils down to. This game makes for very good looking screenshots, but in motion it just looks choppy and awful. There's no point in discussing the lighting effects or whatnot because they're only being rendered half as often as they need to be to matter. Okay, I'm done talking about frame rate. As I continued to play, I only found the graphics to fall apart in more and more places. The Ratchet series has always had a very charming animation that lends itself extremely well to the idea of making a Ratchet & Clank movie. The characters make exaggerated movements and facial expressions that look great in cutscenes and do a great job with that whole visual portrayal of information that I was talking about earlier. In the new Ratchet, just look how wooden and stiff these animations are. What's with this cutscene? Look how terrible this side jump looks compared to the old games. Look how terrible these wall jumps look. What is happening on this grind rail? Why does the Pyrociter look so shitty? Where is Ratchet looking in this cutscene?
To Ratchet & Clank, the chillest dudes I've ever hung out with on a hostile alien planet. Cool.
Basically, this is a game that's well modeled and textured, but in motion, it's just stiff and lifeless, and at points, just looks laugh out loud bad at what's happening on the screen in front of you. I have one more thing to say about the graphics and animations, and this is just a little thing that has bothered me ever since going Commando. So it's not specific to this game, but remember the weapon switching in the original Ratchet? Each weapon and gadget had a fun little opening animation that was really charming. You know, the Pyrociter went like, blah, and the Trespasser went like, it was awesome. Here's more or less what they've looked like ever since. Oh, lame.
Of course, Ratchet knew he'd have to surface to greet me.
Alright. This review is getting really exhausting. There are so many little issues about the presentation that I just need to get off my chest, so let's go through the menus. What's the deal with this weapons menu? It's so boring, and it doesn't give you an idea of how many weapons the game actually has. It's not so much worse than the original game's menu, but this is something that's been fixed for a long time in the series, so I don't understand why they made such a terrible and boring menu here. When your weapons level up, the game tells you the percentage that the stats increase, and there are percentage upgrades through modifications as well. So why wouldn't the screen show those stats? Speaking of weapon upgrades, look how lame the screen is that shows the level up. You hardly even notice when it changes forms. The options are super bare bones, the skill point system has been removed, probably because we have trophies now, which are just skill points minus the reward, and there's a new system for unlocking the gold weapons, now called Omega weapons, which is, wait for it, random drops! Oh, how exciting, especially when they're in this god-awful menu! I'm really not into this style of menu, where all the options are big rectangles, and the highlighted option is on one side of the screen so you can't see what's before it. It's a mess! Bring the camera back so I can see what's going on, and bring the frame rate back up so I can see what's going on. And what's with Ratchet's face in this cutscene? Alright, so let's get into how the game plays. In the grand scheme of things, the gameplay is fine, I suppose. The system of going from planet to planet and getting new weapons and the mix of platforming and shooting is good in concept. The system of leveling up weapons can be fun if you're into that. I constantly felt like it came up way short of the original though. I have several little gripes about the gameplay, like how the controls feel really stiff and wonky and the camera and aiming being especially bad. Like it does that thing where when you turn the stick all the way, like you whack the stick over so that it's fully over, right? And you're aiming on screen, it doesn't start moving at the speed of your stick being all the way over, it accelerates up from 0, which makes aiming just a sluggish pain. Like you're constantly playing this game and it just feels like a chore to just move the camera around because it always starts at 0 and accelerates up from there no matter how you move the stick, and there's no sensitivity options to help this. Bolts that fall beneath your level don't automatically get picked up like they did in the... Oh my god, the reminders. He says that every time. Oh, Dash is getting upset! Overall, though, my main issue with this game is just that it felt like a chore. And that came by way of the story and plot. Oh geez, it's another one of those games where the story and plot is so bad that it actually makes the gameplay bad. The original Ratchet and Clank had a simple premise. Ratchet built the ship, he was missing a part, and he found Clank who could make it work, but Clank also comes bearing the news of a galactic catastrophe. As the plot moves forward, they use Clank's high morals but low understanding of the world against Ratchet's eagerness and recklessness to create a dynamic that always gives you a motive to move forward to the next planet. In the remake, there's a group called the Galactic Rangers that includes Captain Quark that heads up the fight against the evils to come. Ratchet is at first rejected, but soon finds his way into this group. And for the rest of the game, it's just being told what to do by them. It's really boring storytelling. For example, in the original, you find an infobot with a fun ad for the tropical resort planet Pokitaru. Ratchet wants to go because it sounds fun, and he has to convince Clank that it's worth their time because one of the gadgets that they get there might be worth it. You see, the two need to compromise and meet each other halfway, which both develops their relationship and gives the player the motivation to go there. It also makes sense that they would find this infobot because it has an advertisement in it. No matter who gets it, it's relevant to them. In the remake, you find an infobot specifically addressed to Ratchet in the middle of nowhere, which already doesn't make sense, and it's from his manager guy saying that his brother is on Pokitaru and he needs help, so we better go check in on him.
Hey Ratchet, Grim here. Been following your adventures and I couldn't be happier for you. Listen, I don't know if I ever told you this, but I have a brother on Pokitaru. His name's Felton. We don't talk much on account of him being a bit of a slacker, but he sent me a distress call this morning. He said Drek was attacking Pokitaru with these hydro harvester things. I guess the Blarg want their ocean water for something. I tried calling the Rangers, but Captain Quark kept directing me to his agent. Anyway, if you have a moment, could you swing by and check in on him? Thanks, kid. I'm proud of you.
The rest of the time, it's just the Galactic Rangers having missions to go save people on different planets. Not only is that boring, but the entire enemy plot is never really explained either. The original game showed their plan of how they were constructing a new, giant planet by destroying several others, but the new one only has one vague mention of planet building, otherwise they're just bad guys. I mean, not only is the story itself boring, but the way that it's being told is so boring. Like, the original game was so cartoony and fun. It's why people always compared these games to Pixar movies. And it's such, like, irony that now that they're making a game based off the movie that they're making, the story is so blandy boring. Even worse with this story is the way that it's presented to the audience. It's being told through the eyes of Captain Quark from jail, recounting his events that led him there. But this is stupid. This is a reboot, right? So this is supposed to be our introduction to this character? This completely removes his entire character arc. In fact, there are no character arcs. Ratchet wants to be a Galactic Ranger, and then he's a Galactic Ranger. Clank wants to save the world, and then he saves the world. Quark starts the game in jail, and he ends the game in jail. This is so boring compared to the original, where Ratchet is an every Lombax who wants to go out and explore, but he finds himself becoming a galactic hero. You meet Captain Quark, who Ratchet looks up to, and it turns out that he's a buffoon and later a traitor, which creates these two dueling plot lines where Clank wants to stop the main bad guy, Drek, but Ratchet just wants revenge on Quark. Ratchet starts out a nobody, but he ends up a galactic hero. Quark is knocked down from a galactic hero to a nobody. The characters learn and change. Ratchet and Clank's relationship grows and changes. In this remake, the characters are just presented one way at the start of the game. They recount the events that brought them there with no surprises or tension whatsoever at any point. So what sucks the most is the fact that the game's original story would have made a better movie anyway. Ugh!
Destroy her shield! Keep shooting! It's working!
Wrapping back around to gameplay, following around the Galactic Rangers has its own issues. This one character in particular has the worst voice acting I think I've ever heard.
We need to extend the bridge! Hop on that bull crank!
I can't think of the last time I heard voice acting this bad.
It's down. Nice shooting. Bet you never got to do anything like that on Velden.
It just drills into your skull.
We're at the defense cannon, but it looks like the system's on lockdown. We need to get this thing online, and fast.
So what do I think overall? The game is pointless and boring. The graphics aren't great. The presentation isn't good. The story's awful. There's no real challenge to the gameplay. If you want to get into the Ratchet games, don't start at this one. Pick up the HD collection for PS3 and play the 3 that matter most. Or better yet, just get them on PS2 and play the original. You know me, I love playing, I'm always an advocate for playing the very original version of the game. And in this case, it's just so much better. There is no way I can recommend this game. It just does not have a reason to exist, and I never want to see it again. I don't recommend it. So hey, I hope you enjoyed the review because I plan to make a lot more of them. My goal is just to make a review of pretty much every game that I play on stream. So if you like it and you're into that, go check out the stream. It's twitch.tv/superretrobros with underscores. So super_retro_bros. Pretty much the reason that I haven't been putting any videos on YouTube for the last several months, it's been almost a year actually, I think, since my last one, is because I stream on Twitch now. So check it out.